Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to unpack some truly timeless wisdom that honestly feels like it was written specifically for our modern, hyper-connected, and, let's face it, completely chaotic world of communication. We're going to be looking closely at the ancient text of Proverbs, specifically chapter 18, and really analyzing what it tells us about how we hear, how we speak, and what those two things reveal about the very core of who we are. Okay, let's dive into this by asking a very real question. Have you ever spoken before you really listened? I want you to think back to a recent time when you fired off a quick text reply or maybe jumped into an argument before actually reading the whole message or hearing the person out. We've literally all been there, right? You think you know exactly where a conversation is going, you cut in, and then, well, you realize you completely missed the point. It's a universal human experience, but as our sources point out, it's a habit that gets us into a whole lot. Section 1. The weight of our words. You see, our daily communication habits, like how well we listen and what we choose to say, they actually act as a window revealing the very depths of our character. To illustrate this, the source material draws a sharp contrast between two distinct types of people. First, we have what the text calls the closed-minded fool. According to the commentary by David Guzik, this person has absolutely no delight in understanding others. They only find pleasure in expressing their own heart and, showing just how clever they are. They're entirely self-focused, and as a result, they end up isolating themselves. But in sharp contrast to that, we have the prudent heart. This person's ear is constantly seeking knowledge. They don't just want to be heard, they actually genuinely want to understand.
Section 2. Hearing before you speak. The anatomy of wisdom.
So the crucial point is, if we want to build a prudent heart, where do we actually begin? Well, we have to start with the anatomy of wise communication. And surprisingly, that doesn't start with the mouth. It starts with the ears. This is perfectly captured in Proverbs 18:13. He who answers a matter before he hears it, it is folly and shame to him. The renowned commentator Matthew Henry points out that it's our eagerness and our self-conceit that expose us to this shame. We're just so eager to prove we're right or to offer our 2 cents that we speak completely without the facts. It's an impulsive habit that's not only foolish, but ultimately incredibly embarrassing when the truth actually comes out. The text actually gives us this brilliant step-by-step process for conflict resolution. Step 1, listen to the whole matter. Then step 2 introduces another famous proverb. The first one to plead his cause seems right until his neighbor comes and examines him. Have you ever heard one side of a dispute and thought, wow, they are definitely in the right, only to hear the other person's side 5 minutes later and completely change your mind? For sure, we all have. The wisdom here demands cross-examination. It demands that we let both sides speak fully before we move to step 3, rendering a wise answer.
Section 3. The trap of gossip. Destructive words. Now that we've covered the ears, we need to shift our focus to the mouth, because if we aren't careful listeners, our words can become incredibly destructive. The text describes the words of a gossip or a talebearer in a really fascinating way. It says they're like tasty trifles or delicious morsels of food. Unlike a fool whose arrogant babble mostly just hurts himself, gossip is completely different. It's like irresistible candy. When someone offers you a juicy piece of gossip, it's hard to refuse. But here's the danger. Those words go down into the inmost body. They get swallowed, and they fundamentally change how we view other people. They literally poison the well of our relationships from the inside out.
Section 4. Life and Death. The power of the tongue.
This ancient wisdom isn't just giving us polite tips for conversation. It is outlining the ultimate, absolute stakes of our speech. Proverbs 18:21 states, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit." The commentaries point out that many people have caused their own ruin or the ruin of others through a false, injurious tongue. But conversely, the tongue can be a wellspring of wisdom, like a life-giving flowing brook. Every single time you open your mouth, you're wielding an instrument that carries the literal power to tear someone down or build them up. You are choosing death or you are choosing life. Section 5. The heart of the matter. The inner engine. Let's move to and see how this builds into our next core concept. We've talked about the ears and the mouth, but ultimately, these are just instruments taking orders from the heart. To understand what happens when the heart isn't aligned with the mouth, we need to look at a very specific word: hypocrite. The etymology here is absolutely fascinating. It comes from the Greek word hypokrites. Originally, this didn't mean a liar in the way we use it today. It literally meant an actor on a stage wearing a mask. It was someone reciting a part, pretending to be what they are not. They're saying all the right lines, but there's no inner reality to match the outward performance.
Now, what's really interesting about this historical connection is how these sources link this concept of the mask-wearing actor directly to the religious leaders of ancient times, specifically the Pharisees. The historical texts note how Jesus applied this exact term to them. Why? Well, because they had mastered the art of the performance. They cared deeply about their reputation, about being seen in the marketplace, and about looking perfectly righteous. But their inner character was completely lacking. They were just acting a part. The texts recount how the Pharisees were entirely focused on outward religious etiquette, obsessively washing the outside of the cup and the pot. But inside? The sources tell us they were full of extortion and wickedness. They neglected the inside of the cup entirely. They passed over justice and love, focusing only on the exterior shell. And because their hearts were untouched, their seemingly righteous words were ultimately empty, hypocritical, and totally destructive.
Section 6, Wisdom in Action. Modern practice. And this brilliantly illustrates how we actually avoid the trap of the Pharisee and ensure our ears, mouth, and heart are aligned. We need to transition from ancient theory to modern practice. First, apply grace and forgive those who offend you. Proverbs notes that an offended brother is harder to win back than a strong, fortified city, so don't build those walls, tear them down with forgiveness. Second, adopt humility. The text reminds us that pride goes before destruction, but humility comes before honor. And finally, when you're under pressure to speak impulsively or to defend your pride, run to the strong tower. The text says the name of the Lord is a strong tower where the righteous find safety. Find your security in God's character, not in winning an argument.
Which brings us to our final thought. We've seen that our words are deep waters, that listening before speaking is the path of true wisdom, and that what we say is a direct reflection of our unmasked heart. So I want to leave you with this one simple, provocative question. Will your tongue bring death or life today? The power is entirely in your hands and in your heart. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer, and I highly encourage you to take this wisdom right into your very next conversation.